One of the things that makes me crazy is when people say, I have to build a brand, or I know I need to build my brand. No, you have a brand. What you're saying is you want to be more intentional with it. You want to be more strategic about it. You want to be more thoughtful about it. It's everybody has a brand, like it or not.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Flywheel Effect, where we're sponsored by Vital. Vital is the place where both commercial and residential technology integrators come to really level up their business. If you have issues with finding time, you're overworked, you're dealing with financial issues or people issues, or even figure out how to grow your business, Vital is the place where you can come for help, where we drive profit, people, and learn to work on your business instead of working in your business. Now, Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Had a great week. This week we had our Elevate Virtual Intensive, which is, we do that 3 times a year at Vital. This was our first one for 2026. Went deep with our members on lead generation. It was a really great couple of days, and actually leads a little bit into our conversation today because we touched on how to build a trusted brand with your business. And well, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag here, but yeah, I'm excited for that. And then this weekend will be my mother's 80th birthday party.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
How is she doing at 80?
Fantastic. She's 80. Like, people think she's maybe in her 60s. She's doing great.
That is awesome. Just to give you a frame, my grandmother is 96 years old, still drives, not every day. Sometimes she doesn't feel up to it, but still cooks for herself, everything, and is sharp as a tack. I mean, and she is a quintessential New Yorker, which leads us into our guest, who I believe also is a quintessential New Yorker. And this is Alyssa Lily, in quotes, Lily Gelbard from New York. And that is for her family, for her nephew, who couldn't pronounce her name at one point in time, and now is excited to know that he was 2. But that's okay. We don't make excuses for people in this time. But that's okay. Please, how are you doing today?
I am great.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in White Plains in Westchester.
Okay, cool. I worked up there for a while. Ran a company in Harrison, a couple miles south of White Plains. White Plains is a cool little town.
My brother has a company in Harrison, and the border of Harrison's, I don't know, a couple miles from where I grew up.
Yep. All right, cool. I'm on the flip side. I grew up on the flip side of Manhattan. You're north, I was west. Grew up in New Jersey. And there's this competition there's the 4 groups, right? There's Westchester, north, there's Connecticut, there's Long Island, and New Jersey. And we all think we're the best. So it's just the way we operate.
Except you're in the place where we say, what exit? No one says that to anywhere else.
Nowhere else in the world are anywhere what exit. I grew up at exit 135. I'm now at 117.
You always know.
Always know. And it gives you a frame of reference. It's the Park Place is a wonderful thing. Did you spend time in New Jersey at all, or no? Just driving through. You didn't live there at all. Just now you're in.
No.
No.
Sorry, with all due respect.
Exactly. There you go. I got you. That's why I would never live in Westchester either. So I think we're equal.
However, I did spend time in New Jersey at now MetLife, but Giant Stadium before that.
Oh, that's cool. And I want to kind of get into that sports side a little bit. But you are the founder of a company called Point River Group, a personal branding company that helps executives refine and build their personal brands, and which is an exciting place. I think it's a place that many companies and founders and whatever don't focus on enough around their personal brand. They think their company is the only brand. They think that it's not the way to go, but I think it's critical. And we have seen that in Vital. Actually, we had the conversation starting Vital. When Matt and I bought it, I remember saying, Matt, we're going to make you a brand. And I used the term candidate Bernath. We're going to put you on the road and let's build that up. And incredibly effective. But I'd like to hear, before we get into the other stuff, which we can, and I definitely want to get into sports a little bit and understand Giant Stadium, your perspective. Which, by the way, I have been going to Giant Stadium since the year it opened. So I'm a long time.
Oh, wait. Giant Stadium isn't there anymore. You mean?
I know that. I don't go to MetLife. I can't stand
For reference, I'll give you a reference of how it runs deep in my family. My father went to games at the Polo Grounds.
That is awesome. So tell me, how did you end up being focused on personal branding?
All right. You ready for the story? Because it's completely unintentional. So my background's marketing and branding. And I know we'll get to it later, but I did start my career in sports marketing on the hockey side of things, which is my favorite sport. But anyway, and I'm sad because the Rangers are not in the playoffs. But Anyway, and people would always come to me for advice and guidance on their careers, on hiring, on networking, business development. It was never part of my job, but I enjoyed advising people. And at one point, people I didn't know started coming to me for help. And I'm like, I'm not going to give away my time for free. I'll just hang up a shingle. Again, no intention of starting a business, nothing like that. And all of a sudden, there was a business and it started to grow because my approach to helping people was really like, it was strategic, but practical. It was not like fluffy part of coaching, with all due respect to coaches. It was really like, okay, what are you looking to do? Let's figure out your positioning or clarify it. And then what's the path there? Do you need supporting things like resume, bio, LinkedIn, whatever, and then all the guidance on how to get from A to B. And it works. And so I think business started to grow, had to hire somebody to help me, and then was like 2 full-time jobs. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I got to choose one. And I really liked the helping people part of things. And so jumped in. And really funny, you said before about, I think in your vital description about in the business, on the business. I was that classic person working in the business, not on it, head down, working with clients. And so we were growing like really slowly. And then after a handful of years, a couple clients, and we were always working with individual executives at that point. People who were looking for more visibility, a job, a board seat, but usually at the senior level. And a couple of clients came to me within a month of each other and said, this was really helpful for me. Could you come help my team? And I was like, oh, light bulb moment. I could work with companies and get this level of revenue, higher revenue versus lower. Okay, let's do this now. And that's when I feel like the business was born. And then within that year, that's when I started working on the business versus in. I joined Vistage, which I know you guys know about. And for those listening, it's a CEO, peer advisory and coaching organization, does a lot of, I think you guys dig into some of those types of things with companies. Am I right with Vital?
For sure.
Yeah, we run an industry specific version of
Right.
Ours is a
Yeah.
little more focused. Yep.
So I did that, and then I really felt like I really started to grow the business more as, okay, let's have a real strategic approach because we're both B2B and B2C, and how are we going to do that? And then that kind of cuts to today, to what we do today. And yeah, we're a personal branding firm. We help both executives, but also companies strengthen personal brands of their leaders, but also their teams, because the teams are really key too, to help them drive more revenue and enterprise value at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a great story, Alyssa. And I think that working on the business is that lesson that so many business owners forget to pay attention to. I'm in a peer group, a separate peer group called Tribe. And the guy who runs it, he built this enormous business of basically outsourcing stuff. But it didn't really start growing till he just realized, and he had someone tell him, as the CEO, your only job is marketing. If you're doing anything but out there selling and interacting with the world, you're doing your business a disservice. And maybe that's not quite that extreme for many companies, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And speaking of that, the way that I met Alyssa at a buying group event, which you talk about marketing, I presume that was a component of it, right? But you do a lot of speaking across the country for Vistage events. And this was a particular speaking event that you did for integrators. And so what I was interested in is sharing maybe with our audience. So our audience is mostly home service business owners, integrators, and others.
Yeah.
Sharing with them the connection that you made or that you can make between personal branding and home service businesses, and maybe talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is it's like, it almost doesn't matter the business at the end of the day. If you are facing customers, personal branding is important. And it starts with the leaders, right? It starts with whether it's the owner, the CEO, whoever it is, whoever leading the business, you have to have a strong personal brand representing your business. And if you'd say, I'm too busy, it doesn't matter, I don't need this, then you're doing yourself a disservice, but you're doing your business a disservice too. Because how you show up every day, and that's all different kinds of things in terms of how you show up. That could be how you do something like this, what you wear, how you communicate with your team every day, how you communicate with your customers, all of that, and a lot of other things too. I'm just summarizing. That influences someone's interest in becoming a customer, staying a customer, working at your company, right? All of those things, being a vendor. And it can be the big things, but also it's the little things. If you're that person who is always showing up late, if you're that person who it takes someone 5 times to get you to respond to an email, if you just never seem to be prepared for a meeting because you're so busy and doing a million other things. Those are just a few examples. But if those things happen, you're setting a tone for your business. And someone may say, yeah, you do really good work, but there's your competitor does equally good work and they show up on time and they respond when I need little things like that. And that can make the difference. And then what about your team? How are they showing up? Same thing. And it can be something big, it can be something little.
That's great. And I think what I'm hearing from you right now is personal brand is also a way to express to the market, to your customers, both competence and expertise. Like I think because I think your company, people don't believe a company has competence as the same way they can attach to a personal competence.
And if you don't have that competence and that sort of credibility, then they're not going to trust you. And no one wants to do business they don't trust. And if there's an inconsistency, that creates a question in someone's mind. And that question means maybe I won't trust them as much as their competitor. So I'll go to someone else.
Yeah, makes sense. So thinking about local businesses, right? Local contractors, our experience of them is that they tend to think digital presence isn't quite as important because they're local business. But of course, we all know that's not true. So when you think of like a local contractor, what should a local contractor know about how the personal brand of their leadership shapes whether their customers trust them or the trust building piece?
One way I like to think about it is from a referral perspective, like using, let's say, LinkedIn as an example. You may not use it every day, meaning you're not posting, engaging with content. That's a whole nother ball of wax. But business owners are looking up other business owners before a meeting, right? Who is this person? Who am I meeting? Do we know some people in common? Maybe something like that. From like at the executive level, right? From owner to owner, let's say. So if you have a presence that looks like either you never touched it or it's so outdated and it doesn't really speak to who you are, you're already setting an example like, this person doesn't really care, but it doesn't take much to have a better impression that way. And people do look you up. Or let's say it's your company's website and you have the bios of people on the team or even headshots of people on the team. What do they look like? Do they look like it's a place where you want to work with these people or you want to work there? I know the biggest thing we hear all the time, and I know you guys hear it all the time, it's impossible to find people to work. It's really hard to find people. Forget about good people. It's hard to find people. And so if there's this big war for talent of any kind at every level, why wouldn't you as a company want to put your best foot forward on social media, even whatever platform, showing what it's like to work at the company and the culture and the team? People don't just want to collect a paycheck. They also want to be in a place where they like the people and a place they want to stay and where they want to go to.
So how do you do that? But how does that change as far as personal branding versus corporate branding? Or company branding. A lot of these are corporations.
There's definitely a relationship there, right? Personal branding, it's you, but you are also representing the company. So I think they're very closely related, actually. And having a strong foundation for a company brand is really important for people, because Matt could be, what do you call him, the great candidate? He could be this great candidate going on tour all over the country, but when someone looks under the hood at what Vital is and they don't see anything that really makes sense or that's consistent, how good is his brand really at the end of the day? What's the value of it? Because they're not just hiring him, they're hiring the business, right? And so there is a very close link. In fact, in a lot of the work we do, depending on the company, we might do some ground level, kind of some basic branding work just to help to make sure that when the people are elevating their presence, that they're elevating the company in a good way. Meaning, like a company description, maybe the owner of the business wrote it 20 years ago and never thought about it again, but it's not really who the business is today. It's not the customers or the technologies that you work with or the vendors that you work with. It's not current. So it doesn't speak to the people you want to reach, right? So you want to have that current. So sometimes that's important. If social media is important to the business, let's say it's Instagram, it could be LinkedIn, depending on what it is, making sure that the company has a decent presence. That doesn't mean they have to be all over it all the time and be influencer style, but that if someone looks back, if Matt's posting something on whatever platform, if they look back at the company and they look back at Vital, can they tell what it is? Does this look like a place I want to be? So I think they're linked.
But I think there's a nuance here that I'm trying to get on is,
Yeah.
is you don't want them to be a one-to-one equivalence. A person can't be the company. The personal brand has to be different than the company brand.
Right.
Because otherwise that working on versus in doesn't work, because every time someone calls, they say, I want to talk to Joe because it's Joe's plumbing. And they
Yeah.
won't talk to Ed, who's actually going to do the work, whatever. So you have to differentiate. And when you're doing that, it's more than just, the individual, and I'm freeling here in this, the individual has to be more of the subject matter expert in some ways to show
Yeah, like
that
what
competence,
makes you unique? What makes
right?
Joe unique versus whomever? Yeah, because everybody, you might have similarities, but everybody brings something different to the table. And I think what's really hard too, I know you work with people who are starting companies too. It's really hard when you're starting a business or you're a solopreneur and you haven't yet grown it to the next level. The business is you, and you have to work really hard. I remember I had to do that to make sure there was a separation between my brand and the company brand. Like you said, they're certainly
How do you
related.
do that? But how do you do that?
You
How do you
have to.
how do you coach somebody to differentiate those two?
So there's the corporate entity, if you will, that brand, what it is, what you're communicating is what are the problems you solve, who you solve them for, what makes you unique. Is there a culture? Kind of what are the key things that represent you as a company? So that's the foundation. But then what about you? I come to it differently based on my background, based on your background. And there are certain things that I focus on that we might be on the same team and have the same, call it title, if you will, and the same job. But we came from different backgrounds and my expertise is different than yours. So in my brand, I want to emphasize certain things about myself and you're going to emphasize certain things about yourself. There might be some similarities, but there also will be differences too.
I think that's the key for a lot of people is understanding those differences. We're dealing with small businesses for the most part, sub 10 million, sub 5, some sub $1 million, right? Where there's not a lot of people, but establishing that line, if they market or push themselves at all, like that's step one, but then they become so associated with it that they can't separate.
Right. The thing is, they don't have to be pushing themselves. I think a lot of times when people think personal branding, it's like, oh, that's something I have to do. And one of the things that makes me crazy is when people say, I have to build a brand, or I know I need to build my brand. No, you have a brand. What you're saying is you want to be more intentional with it. You want to be more strategic about it. You want to be more thoughtful about it. Everybody has a brand, like it or not, right? And so you don't have to be pushing yourself to do it. It's taking that introspection and saying, okay, maybe are there things that I could do that maybe would be better kind of in terms of the people I want to be reaching? I think about when you think about your brand, it's who do you want to be reaching every day? Who are the people you do reach and who do you want to be reaching? Who do you want to be reaching more of? And what's going to resonate with them? What's important to them? But while still being authentic. Like when Matt goes on his candidate tour all over the country, if he's not acting like Matt, it's not going to be his brand. It's going to be some forced, contrived thing that people they actually even make faces of like that person's being whatever, where it's not genuine to who they are. Then it's not really your personal brand. That is you just trying to be promotional in some way for the business in a way that's just not authentic.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
And what I'm hearing, Alyssa, is that it's not so much creation of anything. It's being intentional. It's more curating what you want the world to see, and maybe going from no brand to some brand is simply sharing who you are, right? It's just maybe exposing isn't the right word, but exposing yourself to the world in a way that is intentional.
And you don't get arrested.
And you don't get arrested for it. Exactly.
Unless that's part of your brand.
And for some people it is.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, or there is. And so
there is, but
that's a really good point. I'll use an example. There's a roofing company here in Orange County, incredibly successful. And the owner, part of his personal brand is giving back. He does a lot of charity work. And he is plastered on every one of his vehicles. Like the vehicles have a wrap that's very cartoonish. And I don't remember the exact name, but I know it was his last name in the roofing company. But it's a huge roofing company. So this guy hasn't been on a roof in 30 years. But he is still the personal brand. He is the brand of the roofing company. And it's like him as a bit of a superhero. But his brand, I don't even know him well, but they do such a great job with personal branding that I know his company gives back. I know charity work is important to him. I know that the culture of his organization from top to bottom, that they that they attempt to instill is one of giving back and doing the right thing. That's just from a personal brand of the owner of the company who at this point probably doesn't even show up to work much anymore.
I would say that's also some of the corporate brand too, if you're talking about the values of the business. So
Yeah,
they've
that's what I
made
was.
as part of the corporate brand him.
Yeah, that's where I was going with this is I believe that some of the fear of smaller business owners is if they personalize their brand, if they invest in their personal brand, they'll get stuck in the business rather than working on the business. But it
No, I
sounds
don't
like
know.
you've had experiences. Of course,
Yeah.
it's just a belief, but it's not true.
And so, yeah, it's helping them understand that's not going to happen. It actually helps. It's what you said, Brent, earlier about spending most of your time on marketing or sales and being the kind of being out there to drive business. A personal brand is that's what helps that, right? If you
Right.
are quiet and you just go by the referrals of the customers that you've had, we're just talking to a company yesterday about that. They've been a solid company and they've grown just by their referrals, a manufacturing firm, and they've just grown by referrals, but that's not helping get their sales really to that next level. They have targets and they're not going to reach it if they stay that way. And it's okay, what are things that we can do if we're not going to hire more people and we're using AI to be more efficient in our operations? What are some other things we can do? Let's take a look at your people. And
Removing generic from the conversation about you or your business is basically what you're
100%,
describing.
Brent. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you come, one of the things I say to people all the time on LinkedIn is most people look generic. If you cover your headshot and your name, everybody, it could be any industry, any position, any industry. But you want to stand, you want to be, whether a lot is even how you introduce yourself, whether it's one-on-one, one to a few people, having a drink with someone, standing in a hallway. It doesn't matter where you are. How do you stand out in a different way? How do you talk about something that's interesting that someone will connect with? I think that's half the battle.
So I think there's a good spot to ask a question. People listening to this, there's a lot of people that have done zero for personal brand. They don't understand what to do. What are 3 things that people can do today to start that personal branding process?
So I think 3 concrete things that they can do is work on their personal introduction. Most people, when they introduce themselves, they're like, "Hi, title, tell me something more." Is it a family-owned business? Have you been in, you said the roofing guy's been in business for 30 years, really involved in the community. What can you say when you introduce yourself that's not generic, that sounds like you could be from anywhere at any point? So I think that's one thing. I think looking at taking an honest look at how you, the 2 things, I lump them together in your communications habits, which is response time and punctuality, being really honest with yourself about that. And usually, by the way, if people have a problem or having challenges with that, there's a real issue, there's an underlying issue that can be fixed. It's not that they want to be that way. There's ways you can solve those problems, right? We can solve those. And then I'd say the third is, if someone looks you up online, what do they see? Are you being intentional? And whether that's LinkedIn or even a bio on your website, what do they see? Is it really the person who you are today and how you want to be known in the marketplace? Does it speak to your expertise?
The step 1 before that is make sure that you are available. There is a presence online.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. Yes. So I was assuming that. Yes, you are correct. Is if you are the face of a business, right? If you are, could you imagine, what was that guy's name, Matt? The roofer guy?
Andis, I think is what it is.
Okay. So could you imagine if everybody saw Andis on all these trucks and everywhere else, and then they went to the website to see who is Andis, and they couldn't find anything about him, or it was one sentence and you're like, that's it? I want to know more. And I'm not saying you have to write a book. It's like, you want to know a little bit more. If you can't find anything about him, not so great. But I think sometimes it's, when you're talking, there was an example, it was like that whole, I love when I feel like my everyday life, whether it's just out in just doing things, working with clients, whatever, things come up every day that I'm just like, oh, I can't wait to share this one. So I met somebody a couple weeks ago, runs a production company. And we were talking about his business, and it sounded like he needed some help with a specific service. And I said, hey, do you want a referral to someone? I know a couple guys who run businesses like that. And he said, yeah, that would be great. And so I mentioned one person to him. He said, I don't know him, but that sounds great. So I sent the introduction, and He emails me and calls me. He's, hold on, I know that guy. I don't want to do business with him. I said, why? He said, a year ago, when I was the president of another company, helping to grow a different company, someone introduced us, we were on a video call, and he spent half the time having his head turned, like looking away. And he didn't really seem interested because at the time I wasn't a prospect for him. And I don't want to do business with someone like that. And I said, you know what? Thank you very much for your honesty. I'm surprised because I think I've referred this guy before, but thank you. It's really good to know that. This guy, without knowing it, this is what we think about when you think some of the unknown lost opportunities.
Yep.
He lost major business. This was a huge chunk of business that this guy lost without knowing it because he was his personal brand. He was busy. He wasn't really paying attention. It was like, yeah, I'm like that. Can you imagine?
I want to highlight something about that what you just said that's even more than personal brand. I think when people walk through life transactionally, meaning what can this person do for me? It's a problem as opposed to being interested in people and relationships.
Yeah, that's part of your brand then. You're a transactional person,
Yeah.
not a relationship person.
And to that, brands can be negative, right? Like
Yeah,
we're talking
yeah.
about branding, but as you said, everybody has a brand and brands aren't all positive. There's a lot of negative ones. And I know 100 people that I wouldn't do business with because of who they are, how they backed it.
And sometimes it can be really surface level too. If you have like in a business, if you have guys who are showing up on site to jobs and their hats backwards, or they're showing up they're wearing branded shirts and their shirts are dirty, wrinkled, a mess, and someone walks in, it's their personal brand. They're not really caring how they show up, but they're also associating with the company brand, right? You want someone who's going to show up a different way. I liken it as to getting back to football reference, when you start a game, the guys, they're going to get dirty. They're going to get messy. Their uniforms are going to get covered with dirt, but they walk out on the field, pristine uniforms every time.
Yeah.
Right. It's not always in the office setting, so to speak. It can happen just when you're on the job doing whatever it is that you're doing. Or if you're showing up late, or if you pull out your phone, right? You're meeting with someone and you are doing the delivery, you are doing the work, but you're talking client, but you're talking to them and looking at your phone at the same time. It's the same type of thing. It's a negative part of your brand.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot here, Alyssa. Thank you for connecting the dots for us. So we spent a good part of our time together so far, I think, convincing our audience that personal brand is important. I'm going to guess by now they're convinced. And so if we're all convinced that personal brand is important, which I believe that we are, Brent asked for the 3 things that they can do. When you think about a company right now that has a decent personal brand, so maybe they've done the foundational things, what are some tests or some things that they can do to assess where they stand today?
That's a great question. So I think one is, so when we talk about personal introduction, get 5 people from your company and ask them, not in the same room, ask them each, hey, how would you talk about the company if you were meeting someone for the first time? What do they say, right? Let's say I was and you could be like either I'm a potential customer or not. You can, however you want to set the stage. Ask 5 people. And if you want to start with your leadership team, if you have a leadership team. If you want, start with or then go to the people who do sales, right? Your sales people or your customer service people, ask them. And also ask the people who deliver. That's a great way to start because then you'll almost always, especially for companies that evolve over time. And it doesn't matter how big or small you are. Most companies, you're evolving over time and what you emphasize, right? We talked about that earlier. So if your written message hasn't evolved, the likelihood is how you're talking about the business hasn't either. So I would say that's a great way to start.
I was just curious as a follow-up to that, what are they looking for? When they go through that exercise, what does good look like? What does not good look like?
So it's not about really good and bad. It's what's current. So let's say let's say you offer, 3 main services and you really have 5. And the 4 and 5 are what used to be really big with the company. But right now they really they're just not that profitable. So you decided you're really going to you double down on 1, 2, and 3, right? So then you have people talking about saying, oh yeah, we're at this company and we do 4 and 5. And they're not talking about 1, 2, and 3 because they've been doing 4 and 5 because they've been at the company 20 years. And so sometimes it's talking about the wrong service or leaving out a vertical that you work with, right? That can be the difference too in connecting to someone or the size of company or geography, or it depends on the business. But sometimes those little details, when a company has changed, that can make the difference in someone else hearing about, oh yeah, you could help solve my problem. Or I know somebody who you can help.
Got it.
All right.
Sorry, let me close the loop on that, Brent, real quick. What I'm hearing from you on that one, Lisa, is alignment. You want to hear
Yes.
alignment. Got it.
Yeah. So you know what? So that's a really good word, Matt. Alignment, consistency. Whenever it comes to branding of any kind, you really need that. And whether it's people, whether it's messaging, even down to like classic branding, I'm looking for something that's visual, like an Apple phone. But in recognizable products, there's a brand consistency. You visually see the same thing. Or you have an experience, you go into a store, you go into a Starbucks, you're having the same, presumably, the same experience in every store. So with a company, you want that consistency with the messaging, with your people, because that's what creates that trust and then that loyalty and then those referrals.
So you identified a lot of for self-assessment, but at Point Road, you're also going to have a new client. What is actually your assessment process for a new client that you're onboarding?
So we'll take a look at what we can find, what we see online, and we can tell very quickly if there's an inconsistency or not enough information, right? And then in talking to the leadership, we can also tell very quickly in terms of their presence. They will tell us about their salespeople, and then we can tell within a few minutes of where if there's an opportunity for them to improve.
How often do you see a disconnect between the leadership and the rest of the team?
A lot. But I would even say a step before that is leadership disconnect amongst themselves, where you'll have, let's say you have 3 or 4 people on a leadership team and 1 or 2 are not so bad with their personal brand. And the other 2, it's like non-existent. They're just not paying attention at all. So I think it's really important for leaders of any kind, whatever that leadership role is, it doesn't matter what area they're leading. They've got to get their stuff together before they can even think about everybody else. Because if they're not, you can't expect your team to do something if you're not walking the walk.
Got it. All right. I know we have a little bit of time left, but I want to take a shift on this. So you're involved in sports a lot, sports marketing. There's 2 types of sports marketing. There's marketing of sporting teams, sporting events, whatever it is. But then, especially like when you look at the NBA, the athletes themselves have done an incredible job of building their own personal brands, which supports the organization as well.
It's also for their financial gain. I think sports,
100%.
Personal branding in sports is to me different than sports in business, because it's all about, it is constant about social media. And you have to be amazing and not on LinkedIn. And I mean like TikTok, Instagram, they are like the big names in sport. That's where there's so much time, because it's all about visibility.
Okay.
And so and then there's the other pieces too, and how they're showing up in person and their values, et cetera. But I think in sports, it's really changed over time. But what's interesting is I think that my original training in sports is what helped me. It drilled into my mind the importance of consistency, because way back when I did event marketing for the NHL, and there was a quality control department you'd have to go through for anything that you did that was branded. Everything had to be exact. Things had to be consistent. And I was young, lots of fear drilled into my head, and you don't want to make a mistake. And so that consistency, that critical consistency of how a brand needed to visually look, was drilled into my head. And then that kind of took the next level down to messaging needs to be, if visual needs to be, it was super consistent, then so does everything else. And I think that was the ground level work for everything that I do today. Scary enough.
Interesting. And you're a hockey fan, as you said. And I got it because also you said a Ranger fan.
Yes. I'm sad they're playing golf now.
Yeah, bring it up. I think you're at the NHL in the late 90s, right after they won the Stanley Cup in 94, which is probably a pretty exciting thing for you. It was for me too. I was at Game 6.
Oh, me too.
Oh, you were? Oh, cool.
That's crazy.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, that ticket. But you must have been excited to join the NHL right after that. How did it happen?
Oh, absolutely. Before that, when I was in business school, I interned at the American Hockey League in marketing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was, and I just always wanted to work at the NHL. But yes, it was very cool. It was, interestingly, after some time there, you become, because you see what goes on in the sport, you become a little less, I don't know, I became maybe a little less of a fan. And then when I left, I like went back up again, but it was an amazing experience. And the people were great. So I'm still in touch with some of the people today. My birthday was earlier this week, and somebody I worked with from back then just emailed me to wish me happy birthday. It was a special time, but I personally think it's the best sport on the planet. But
It's pretty fun.
Love it.
yeah.
Well,
But I've looked a little bit more to this connection, even if it's different. But I think what's happened in sports, I just want to focus on this a little bit, is sports really wasn't about marketing 30 years ago. Like, it was about the game and playing it, and it was almost looked at as being, oh, that is contrary to the purpose of our lives, which is the sport.
Yeah.
But since then, especially in the past 20 years, and it's actually really since Jordan, right? Since Jordan took marketing to the next level, but it took all the rest of sports time, they realized that marketing is what was going to drive their values. And to me, I look at that connection as that's what's going on in a lot of small businesses too. They think, oh, my job is not marketing. My job is plumbing or roofing or whatever. Look at a sporting example. I mean, the values of sports teams went up 25x because they focused on the marketing angle. I mean, look at F1. They used to be just about driving. Now it's all marketing. It's just the way things find success, right?
Yeah.
But I think that analogy is really critical for a lot of these small businesses.
Yeah. And the way more people need to know about you, right? Like you
Right.
could be the number one roofer, let's say, use that example, in your neighborhood. But don't you want to go beyond your neighborhood? Don't you want more people to know how amazing, what great jobs you do on roofs, and you could help them too? And no one's going to know unless you get the word out. And you can't just rely on that referral, because that's going to grow really slowly. But if you have some marketing behind it, that may grow a lot faster. Same thing with its fan base. One of the things you were talking about with sports, it's really helped people increase their fan base beyond just in their kind of small geographic footprint. You look at what's happening internationally with all of the sports, or most of them at least. There's fans all over the world now of NHL, MLB, NBA, NFL. They're playing their games in other countries. They don't have teams there, but now they're reaching all those people. The only way they're going to do that is through marketing. And it's like, how do you define marketing? Is broadcast part of marketing?
Like, I think when we talk about a small business, many of them are their best kept secret in their own hometown.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's what Brent was alluding to here is these small business owners might be the best plumber in all of Monmouth County. But if nobody knows about them, then they just don't grow and they don't find the success. And so it's ultimately no longer about being.
And it's, as the leaders of the business, sometimes need to do something where you talk about, okay, maybe not their brand, but putting themselves out there a little bit. If you want to grow your business, you're going to have to do some things that maybe you don't love or that aren't comfortable. If you want to grow, if you don't want to grow, that's all another story. But if you do want to get to that next level, whatever that next level is, you have to do new things or do more of things that, that maybe you're scratching the surface on.
How often do you hear this objection? I don't want to be seen as a braggart or pounding my chest because they know some guy who does and isn't worth it. How often do you hear
all the time, because there's a difference in how you do it, right? You can talk about something one way and talk about it another way. You can post about something one way and the same thing another way. It's the tone that you use, it's the words that you use, but also it also speaks back to your brand. If you are not a braggart and, hey, look at me, that kind of person, and you're sharing something about something that you or your company just accomplished, no one's going to think of you as a braggart or somebody like that. But if that's the type of person you are, then they will. It's also about that consistency again and authenticity. It always comes back to those things.
No, this is great. Alyssa, we're Lily, so as you know, us familiars call you now. How can people get a hold of you?
They can email me, they can call me, they can find me on LinkedIn, however they'd like. So,
how would you like them to share where they should find you?
Best way is emailing. Gelbard
What's your email?
at pointroadgroup.com.
Spell it.
A as in apple, G as in go, B as in boy, A-R-D as in demon, A Gelbard at Point Road Group. Point your finger, road like a road, and group like a group.
All right, cool. Hopefully people get chat to you. Matt,
Yeah.
any last questions before we wrap here?
No, this is great, Alyssa. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I was excited to hear about your story.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun.
No, this is great. And maybe we'll get to hockey game someday. I think we're
Yes,
we're
yes,
in
we
this.
love that.
Lisa, thank you so much. Matt, as always, it's been great. This is Brent Sonnek-Schmelz from the Flywheel Effect. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please give us a like, a follow, a written review would be great. Give us one of those, hit those 5 stars. And if you think there's someone who would find this valuable, please share it with them. Until next time, this is the Flywheel Effect. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to the Flywheel Effect. Our journey through the intricate world of luxury home services continues to be fueled by your passion for excellence and innovation. If you found value in our conversations today, don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. More insights and resources. Visit us online at growwithvital.com. Until next time.